Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the summit. I'm your co host, Dr. Mike Sapiro, clinical psychologist and ordained Zen monk. And I'm very excited to be here today with the wise and very funny Dr. Pedram Shojai. He is the founder and director of the Urban Monk Academy, a prominent voice in health and personal development, and host of the Urban Monk podcast. He's produced films like Vitality and Prosperity, and docuseries such as Interconnected and Gateway to Health. As a New York Times bestselling author, his work includes The Urban Monk, Rise and Shine, Focus, and the Art of Stopping Time. Inspiring reads for people really wanting to prosper and live well in their life. Pedram, welcome to our summit. Thank you so much for being here.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
I'd like to start off, as I do with most interviews, with what's most alive for you and what you're teaching these days.
I finished, thank you for that. I finished a series late last year called Homesick Home, all about the stuff in our homes that make us sick, that we should look for, mold and all the kind of usual suspects, but the plastics and the stuff we don't need. And it really sent me down this rabbit hole of looking at what home is, what healing is, and how healing cannot happen unless we feel safe biologically, neurologically, immunologically, and all of it. So from everywhere from your gut lining all the way to, the domestic partner in your house to the things outgassing in your living room, these all send signals. And if you don't feel safe, on any of these levels, your healing pathways get shut down, your mitochondria shut down, you can't heal any of it. And so here I am for the last 30 years as a healer, trying to doctor people, and we're finding all kinds of very interesting new research that's coming out showing that this is what blocks the work we've been trying to do. And so I've really been working with folks to turn their homes into a sanctuary so that the one place they're supposed to feel safe actually does that job. And it's been very impactful because people are now starting to feel better. It's like, of course, you spent 8 hours of your life in this place called a bedroom. Let's start there, right? It's just leverage.
I have so many questions, and I'd like to go in two different directions. One is the home as refuge. As an urban monk myself, living in an urban place, my home is a hermitage. So it's set up for me to have a place that's like a refuge from the daily urban lifestyle. And then we have the practicalities of what do you do in the home and how do you clean it up? How do you tidy? So let's start off with maybe your thoughts on, especially for the audience, helping them understand how do you make their home a refuge?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my home's a refuge until those kids come home, and then it's pandemonium. And so how do you set boundaries? How do you create space? How do you allocate time to that space so it becomes real? Like if you have a corner of your house that you make for your meditation practice, and it's just a cute place where you have pictures of Babaji or Jesus, but you never visit it, then you're not actually utilizing that space with time to effectively get the results that you want in your life, which is the peace, the Zen, whatever. And so creating space and boundaries around it and creating hard and fast rules around that space. Like, this is my office. This is where I record interviews. So don't bring your yo-yo and put it on my desk. Don't, and using boundaries to really keep the sanctity of space, I think, is a big part of it. But then learning to honor that in your own daily rituals and moving from one space to another. Like I have a part of the house, it's a converted garage, that is for uptime, right? There's a power plate, there's weights, there's stuff that I do that's a lot more high heart rate than my Zafu cushion and my deceleration space upstairs in the bedroom. And so using the house and curating it, whether you live in a one-bedroom apartment or, a house that has rooms for everything, but curating your space and allocating time and mindfully having the waveform that you want to emanate and manifest in those spaces, I think is something that is oftentimes overlooked. And you come home and there's screens on and there's stuff going, and there's nothing more damaging and deleterious to one's health than to let the media or the socials climb over the city wall, get into the castle keep, if you will, and disturb the sanctity of your home. And so I would, I'll pause there, but that's where I would start with that.
Well, let's talk about mindset then, because I'm imagining a lot of our viewers are going, all right, that sounds great, but I can't do this, or I have too many people in the house, or there's lots of reasons we give ourselves why our health isn't a priority and our well-being isn't. How do we shift to a mindset where boundaries then become possible?
I think let's start by saying most of us are too nice and we don't have boundaries. And I think healthy boundaries make for healthy relationships and healthy humans. And so my kids know, and they'll walk in and they'll, dad, buy me this thing, or whatever kids do, right? And they'll see me on my Zafu cushion and they'll just kind of pump the brakes and slow walk backwards. And they know that, unless the house is on fire, obviously I heard you, dude. When I come out of this room, we'll talk about it. Right. And so setting that space up and saying, look, I need this for me. So if I'm going to coach your football and be in your karate and do all the things that you need super dad to do here, this is where this guy recharges his battery. Right. And so the boundaries become a critically important part of that. But upholding the boundary is how boundaries work. Right. So communicating that this is my space, and then what do you need for you? And those things I think have become very squishy. And we could talk about the attention economy and all the issues that have overrun the sanctity of our homes and our boundaries. Right. If you can't have a boundary with your own consciousness because TikTok owns a piece of it, then it's very hard to uphold boundaries within the four walls of your home and in your relationships. And so I think it all kind of folds back on our own awareness, talking to a Zen guy. But that is, it's easy to go really kind of hippy dippy and abstract with that. But I would love to dig into the brass tacks of how you actually make that happen in your life to preserve your sanity. Right. This isn't some far off, like I'm going to go off and have some nirvana experience. That's wonderful. Let's start with you keeping your shit together. So when the bullets are flying, you are still the parent you need to be, or the partner you need to be, or the dog owner that they'd like you to be.
Just before we make that practical shift, how do you coach or mentor or help people choose themselves?
Yeah, usually they come in through pain. Right. Wellness is a very high order area of the Maslow's pyramid. So, I seldom have folks show up and be like, I want to be well. Right. Most people come in and say, this hurts. Right. My life sucks. My marriage is falling apart. My gut is destroying my, my life. And so it's finding, most people come in with a pain point that needs to be resolved. They've been trained to look for a pill for an ill. They've been trained to find someone to help them and a savior outside of them. And so, it's rough out there, right? People are not looking for, self-actualization for the most part. And the ones that are already doing some sort of yoga or meditation practice and are trying to refine their practice. And I've taught at that level. And I respect being at that level. I just think that we're not going to win the war staying up there on some sort of high Himalayan, plateau, working with the 1% of people that are already, the choir, right? And so I rolled up my sleeves and got down and dirty.
And what I'm thinking about, and also want the audience to know, is that pain is a dharma gate. Like, it's a point that you can go through toward your well-being. I think so many people are coming to us to go, I don't want to feel this pain. And what I actually end up saying is, this is a treasure. It's going to wake you up, whether it's psychological or physical or spiritual. That pain that you don't want to feel is the thing that's going to wake you up to treat yourself better, to take care of your home better. So I actually applaud people who lean into the pain and go, okay, this is what's going to help me. So I do appreciate the pain points for that. So they come to you and they're like, I don't like this thing. I don't want to do it. Give me a pill. You're like, actually, you're the one who needs to do this work. And so then what? How do you get them?
And look, there's years and years of brainwashing that have said, well, here's the pill, here's the Quaalude, oh, here's the St. John's wort. So it's all of these things that are externalized solutions, to me, are a form of idolatry. right? You're looking for something outside of you to fix the inside of you because you have not properly taken the not just the interoceptive, not just the exteroceptive. We talk about all the different forms of perception, all these arrays, all these data streams that come from chemoreception, that come from proprioception, from the ability to tap into your five senses, the ability to now hear what your body is saying, to say, okay, well, yeah, I do have a headache. And yes, an Advil would be lovely right now. But the better question is, why do I have this headache? Am I dehydrated? Am I upset? Am I allergic to something? And that higher order form of medicine leads to actual resolution instead of the $1 trillion industry that's just there to put fingers in holes and plug up problems. And you wonder why our healthcare system is collapsing. It's because it's not oriented towards solutions. There's no money in that, right? But that's where your freedom comes from. That's where you get your life back.
Did you just say your self-awareness is higher order medicine?
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what we want. And that's what we're going for. I love it.
Yeah. Well, no, you know what? I would say, and this is semantics here, that's what we want, right? But that's not what the market wants. And so everyone ends up doing this, like, let's make a deal and let me, find you where your pain point is at and intercept it with what you think is going to be there and eventually try to lead them in, if they're ethical, to higher order stuff. But the market is just out there with snake oil or pills or whatever because people are just trained to ask for that. And man, that's boring. I've been around the block, and that's where all the marketers are hawking crap at people, and people are still listening to summits trying to figure out why they're not better. This is why, right? You have to wake up to yourself, right? And once you do, then yeah, look, St. John's wort might be a really good tool.
It sounds like you're open. Yeah, it sounds like you're open to the tools out there, and medicines are needed when they're needed. But the first order is self-awareness, really feeling, attuning to, and having a relationship with our bodies.
Yes, and there is a chicken and egg conversation around there because look, I'm gluten and dairy intolerant. I learned that the hard way, right? But if I were to right now eat a cheese burrito and go sit on my Zafu cushion upstairs, my self-awareness has now folded back on inflammatory cytokines that are coming from intestinal permeability and lipopolysaccharides, creating a 3-bell alarm in my system saying, why'd you do that, dummy?
You mean you're farting a lot? Is that what you do?
Well, no. Some like the guys that fart a lot are actually luckier in a lot of ways. I'll start getting joint pain, neuroinflammation, mild forms of anxiety, and insomnia. And I could think to myself, what is this psychologically? What did my wife say? What, I'm a victim of this. And, and instead of being like, what the hell did I eat? So I think that it's a two-way street of saying, I got to fix the lifestyle things to help me become more self-aware, bring down the flames so that I could observe what's happening internally. And then as I fold my awareness back in and become more self-aware, then it's easier for me to do awareness practices. It's why I like teaching Qigong to certain subsets of my patient populations instead of saying meditate, because you put them on a cushion and they're just like, are you freaking kidding me? It's too loud upstairs. It's like, okay, well, look at your hands. Let's start with this, right? Like doing things that bring their sensory arrays back in and capture the monkey mind. And eventually, yeah, they could sit on a meditation cushion, but some people can't start there.
Yeah, it's not right for everybody. Nothing is right for everybody.
Amen.
And I think people listening should know that you have options, and there's a lot of different mechanisms we can practice that work with our constitution. It's just a matter of getting to know this constitution and our bodies. And so
the problem, sorry to interrupt, and the problem is right now there is a 56-year-old woman who's listening to us who has taken really bad healthcare advice from a 28-year-old biohacker bro dude because he said this worked for me. And there are filters through which you should take your health, your mental health advice as well, right? And just because some guy's an influencer doesn't mean his advice is good for you. And I think that is a very big problem in the industry now. It's like, who's giving you this advice, and what do they know about your hormones?
Mm. Why are people listening to internet shamans, internet doctors?
Because they've been trained by the attention economy to listen to external things, and their attention has been gamed with dopaminergic circuits to
Mhm.
keep them consuming media that grabs their attention, scratches the itch, keeps them there, buy something, come back. It wasn't this, it was that. And so it's you're a Zen guy. They've been trained to be hungry ghosts. We all
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
And that is the spiritual malady of our time. Buddha talked about it thousands of years ago, but the internet and the social media and the algorithms that are gaming that have made it so profoundly important to take your mind back in an
Mhm.
era where AI is playing chess against you and winning every time you look at your social feed. It's very
Mhm.
difficult if you are at the party, right? Like you don't go to the party, you don't drink, you don't have the hangover. You start getting
Mhm.
into the socials, it's just trying to figure out how to catch you.
Is there a healthy balance?
I'm not sure.
Mm.
I'm not sure. I'm very well trained in mind, body, spirit stuff,
Mhm.
right? And it is very easy to be like, ooh, that was interesting,
Mhm.
and just get sucked right down the rabbit hole. And I say this all the time. It's like, I'm not smart enough to watch TV.
Mm.
Give me 2 weeks of watching football and I'm buying a truck, right? Like the messaging and the media is just pummeling you into submission to say the solution to your problem is obviously this.
Mhm.
You are not complete without this purse. Fill in the blank.
Mhm. And which is the hungry ghost issue. It's a very thin throat and an extended belly, and you can't get enough in. You can never, ever, ever get enough in. There's no satiation of those external goals and drives.
That's it, man. You're looking for love in all the wrong places, right? It comes through your crown chakra. It goes from the earth to the center of heaven, and you fold your attention inward to realize who you truly are. And that's the only game in town. Everything else, you're in that alternative reality of hungry ghosts trying to find answers outside of yourself. It's a spiritual malady, right? I don't care
Mm.
what tradition you come from, right? You have to find your true self, your God self. And when you do, then you're free.
Mm. So, what direction do we go now? We can talk about methods for going inward. I still
Yeah.
kind of like the idea of like taking care of the home. It's a very practical and important tool because a messy home's messy mind, messy home, and it hurts us down to our cells. But also, if you find it most important to help us go inward,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, so let's, in honor of the summit and the kind of intent of what we're trying to do around these new years and habits and all that.
Mhm.
I'd like to speak to why I think these New Year's resolutions are a waste of time, if I
Totally
could.
love it. I love it, and I have a similar perspective. So please, let's hear it.
Yeah. So right now, as we're sitting here recording this, right, the year is starting to close down windows and tabs, right? As an animal, I hopefully have gathered enough food in the northern hemisphere to make it through the winter. There is no farming, there is no harvesting. That party is over. And I am in the introspective planning stage of hunkering down, restoring my energy, surviving the winter, and preparing for the next season to plant and go to harvest. Right. And as a hunter gatherer, hopefully there's still food around, but I am not in a place where I'm out in the sunshine all day. And so, is this the time to say, okay, on some arbitrary date created by the Romans on a Julian calendar that has nothing to do with the actual seasons? Should I be saying, okay, I'm going to do like a burpee challenge with my busted hip and my sore neck? Or is this more of a time for planning, mapping, introspection, and the inception of how I'm now going to ride the energy of the season upward into some velocity next year, right? And we go from zero to hero very quickly because of artificial lights, because we're not connected to nature. But I just think that this isn't necessarily the time to go full afterburners jets going. This is the time to really think about what happened last year. What are my priorities? What are the 5 plants in my life that I can water? And how can I start to allocate my attention to my priorities and reconcile that, and then start putting energy, attention, and action into that, moving into the spring and summer, and use that energy to reasonably get somewhere and not set up goals that I'm going to fail at and prove to myself that I fail at these things year after year. So I think the whole thing is just kind of a shit show. I don't think New Year's resolutions are the right way. I think this is hibernation time, this is introspection time, and this is journaling and mapping time. Whoops, wrong time of year. And if you want to think of anything as the new year, I would say it's winter solstice, right? December 21st as the shortest day, the longest night of the year kind of turns into energy starting to express upward. Great. Let's set intentions and ride that up into the new year. But coming out guns blazing, thinking you're going to do some sort of workout and put out all this energy in a time where biologically you're not designed to put out energy, you're designed to conserve energy. I just think it's the wrong time of year to do this stuff.
It's like waking the sleeping bear and say, "Let's go for a run." It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And then he doesn't feel like it. So he feels like a loser instead of being like, no, it's hibernation time. Leave me alone.
Exactly. Why can't we let ourselves rest? Because this is such an important part of my practice, and that what I teach clients too is rest and restoration are a part of the doing. You can't keep your car running all the time. So why don't we just allow ourselves what's natural, which is rest, restoration, grounding, hibernating?
How can I rest if I spent all my money on a bunch of bullshit I didn't need? So now I got to go hustle up more money to buy more bullshit because I'm a good slave that's told what to do. So if you don't stop this ceaseless consumption, trading your time, energy, and money, like you trade your time and energy for money all the time, but you'll blow your money on a bunch of stupid stuff and then you got to go spend more time and energy making it. So if you're on this hamster wheel of consumption and work, and the economy needs you to keep going because God forbid GDP goes down and the stocks do a blip and some hedge fund loses a couple $1 billion, you are part of a system that is slavery of your time and energy into an economy that just needs you to keep producing, and you're facing deadlines instead of looking at your lifeline, right? So I just think that you have to question the whole damn thing and be like, what do I need? And if I need to stop time to rest and drink from infinity, what am I doing right now? And where am I leaking my water, right? My time, my energy, and my money into things that don't serve my life goals. If I were to die tomorrow, is this the way I want to be living my life? Okay, then maybe it's time to question it now in my 40s or 50s, or 60s, 70s, wherever you're at, and realign where my energy, my time, and my attention goes to actually be in sync with what I say I want, instead of mindlessly stumbling forward, needing to work, not being able to rest and relax because my momentum keeps me from stopping, right? And to your point, it's all doing and no being. Doing doesn't make you happy. Now, doing is a part of completing a circuit of manifestation and all sorts of really cool things that we could get into. But if you're doing and you haven't tapped into the essence of your being, who's doing what and why? Again, we're back on the hungry ghost thing. And that's, I think, the pathology that we're going to keep circling around, because that person can't be happy because they don't even know who they are. So what are they doing?
So if you were with somebody who's like, look, I have these New Year's resolutions. You're like, hold on. But let's first ask what you really want for your life. I mean, what are we at? Because I'd love our audience to go away from this talk going, I'm going to do something different this year because of this talk. It inspired me to think differently about my energy, my resources, and my values. That's what we're hoping for. Let's help them do that.
Yeah. I would say if your life was a garden and you had room for 5 plants, what would they be? Obviously, you have your family, your relationships. I mean, and it could be 6 plants, it could be 7 plants. Family, relationships, your health, your career, your passions, your hobbies, whatever that is to you. I never want to suggest to people what they should do with their time. That's their God-given resource, right? Um, but what are the important areas in your life? And within those, which plants are taking all the water? Like, is your career giving you a heart attack? Is your marriage destroyed because you're, a health nut and you can't stop because you don't want to face inward and grow? And, there's so many places you could look at the math shifting. But identifying what those plants are and then having some radical accountability with where your time, money, and energy are actually going. And then looking at where the weeds are. If they're not part of those, say, 5 plants, and they're getting water, then they're a weed. So either they have to become a plant and you got to make room for them, or you're watering weeds. And so just this kind of accountability to one's stated goals versus where we're spending our time is the place to start. And when a patient would come to me back in my doctoring days, and they would tell me about their priorities, I'd say, great, open up your phone. Let's look at your calendar. Because you told me family is your utmost priority, but I see no family items on that calendar. How are you allocating time for your son, for your marriage? Oh, really? You want health? Where's health on this? Oh, I never have time for the gym. I don't see an appointment with you at the gym. Mm-hmm. How are you ever going to fulfill that if you haven't allocated time? It's the same thing we talked about home. Oh, I have this Zendo I built at home, but I don't have time for it. Well, who's allocating that time? Mm-hmm. It's your calendar. It's your time. Your precious heartbeats. I don't know how many you have left, but if you can't allocate your heartbeats in the currency of time towards the priorities that you say are important to you, how are they ever going to manifest? And this might sound a little trite, but if you think about how we live our lives and how our days just kind of blow forward, most people are egregiously off in what they say they want and how they allocate their time. And just bringing those together, I've found makes a profound difference in actually getting to one's goals, because it brings radical honesty to where our time is going. Mm-hmm. And you're going to find that there are time bandits everywhere, whether it's Betty at the water cooler or TikTok or the UFO threads you've been following or whatever the heck it is. Time bandits are energy parasites, and they are everywhere in our lives. And we have not identified them because we somehow have associated them with downtime, right? Instead of stretching and petting your dog and sitting on your Zafu cushion and doing the things that are actually good for you, the energy parasites have found ways to pilfer our time away from our priorities and sell that time to the highest bidder, whether it's Toyota or the bag or the supplement company or whatever it is. They're gaming your attention and stealing your time away from your life and selling it. It's called the attention economy. I didn't make this up.
Mm-hmm. I find when I work with most people trying to make these changes, and acceptance and commitment therapy out there has a really cool activity called clarifying values. And it does just this. It really looks at, let's look at these different domains or plants and see how much time, how much do you value it, how much time. It becomes very clear. People are allocating their resources, which is time and energy and attention, to things that don't fill them up. And so they end up feeling very depressed or existentially in distress or anxious. But I find underneath all that, there's drives they have to prove themselves, so they overwork. There's drives to find value in producing. And so we have to often go through those threads and go, well, why are you putting 100% of your time into this or 90% instead of that? Well, if I don't do this, I won't feel like I'm this so how do you deal with when people come and you recognize that their underlying limiting beliefs are actually the poison that is in their well?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love this. So first things first, it's kind of like, John's in bad debt and John's got trouble. Okay, well, you cut up his credit cards and you figure out where his money's going and where to, kind of tighten up his money budget. I think first stop on this is always, where I started, which is time budgeting and saying, okay, well, where's your time leaking? And then when you identify that, then the bigger question that you brought up so astutely is the why. Got it. My dad was judgy. Got it. My immigrant parents needed me to, push our generational wealth forward because of what they went through. I mean, fill in the blanks. There's narratives, there's biases, there's belief systems. And then as these come to the forefront, then we start to understand where the pain, right? The healing actually is. It isn't, the solution has never been, you need to take more astaxanthin, right? It's always been this really ineffective, inefficient use of your life force down these paths that are pilfering said life force in what my Zen master calls this perpetual cycle of doing. Now, you might not be banging away on a keyboard with your fingers, but mentally, you are putting so much energy into the edifice of this person you need to be at the office because they don't know that deep down you're really insecure and weak. And so you're building this complex of this personality that is nothing but a defense mechanism so that you don't face this sense of annihilation and feel vulnerable in front of the people around you, right? And then when you realize that that's your energy going into building this construct that's so exhausting, that then becomes a profound healing opportunity. And, it might take all the king's horses and all the king's men, but that's where Humpty Dumpty starts to come back together.
I just like, is he throwing nursery rhymes at me? Right?
I totally did. I actually kind of live between realities. And so you never know whether it's my meditation or the college LSD that pulled something through. No, but I mean, literally, if you can't speak in metaphor, you're missing the deal here, which is everything relates to everything because our relationship with reality is deeply imbued with metaphor.
Well, symbols. Our subconscious thinks in symbols and metaphors and images. And so it's good to have these out for people. I love the metaphor of the 5 or 6 plants, the idea of what do you want to tend? Those will grow. Are you doing your weeds or are you doing these plants that are meaningful? I want to stick on that persona for a second because in my work, I call it a patchwork persona. All of these patches that society, our parents, culture have put on us that have all of a sudden become this persona we're living through, and we're living someone else's life. And that's where I find depression caused most, when we realize we're not living our own lives, we're living a persona's life that we didn't even choose. And it is exhausting. And so much depression and anxiety comes from either trying to live up to that persona, or it's depressing that we're not being ourselves. So my main job is helping people find that inner authenticity, what's innate in them. And I find that's where people thrive the most, because then they automatically start putting energy toward what's innate and authentic in them. So it sounds like you're speaking the same language in essence.
Yeah, and I want to double click on that and highlight something that I find to be challenging and troubling, right? Because you're a clinical psychologist, you're a professional dude who's trained to do this and create a container and allow for people to then find themselves and deconstruct some of these narratives and find, a new way of being within the context of this arc of personal growth and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a danger worth noting that, look, you find a practice, you follow, you ride that horse into the corral, you find a doctor, you work with that doctor, but finding safe containers to then not find a new meta narrative that maybe serves you a little bit better, but then, is serving a new master is, I think, a dangerous part of this ecosystem. And I think ever since the pandemic, there's some monkeys that have shown up, man. There's some really unqualified people giving bad advice that are playing the guru game. And because of my responsibility to everyone, I just need to say beware of the guru when it comes to this conversation in particular. Work with a professional, work with someone that doesn't say, and you got this because of me, right? It's your awakening. It's your juju. You found it. Now, the better question is, who am I within that context? And who just asked that question, and continue to grow instead of pull over and be like, oh yeah, I'm spiritual. I'm a Buddhist. I identify as this now, right? And we stop because we hit the next level of pain. And that next level of pain gives us another opportunity for growth, but also presents us with discomfort. But I'm less resting on the laurels of the work I did in the 80s. I'm good, man. I'm a monk. That's where we fail. Every day is a growing opportunity for all of us.
Help people then identify something in themselves when they're starting to go toward this new thing or the internet guru, where they could go, wait, I'm kind of doing the same thing over again. It's just toward this person or this company or this product, because that product or this person or that company is going to save me. Because we do keep falling back into those habits. Because I do have to say, I think people are where we don't feel like we belong often. We do feel lonely and isolated. And so it's like, oh, the thing that person's saying feels so good. I'm going to go over there because I want to feel good like that. But what happens is they might get caught and lose themselves in that instead of continually find what's true for them.
Yeah. And so I want to be mindful of time because this is a huge rabbit hole. And I love this rabbit hole, but broad strokes. Kiss the ring, run away. Broad strokes. You got this through me. You need me to access this, run away. Broad strokes. Sexual impropriety, run away. Right? Putting you down because you're not there. I've been through martial arts traditions and yoga traditions. There's clean players and dirty players. But broad strokes, just look at kind of cult 101. You could Google this stuff and see what they do. There's a lot of that happens. But also it's just like, oh my God, if I don't travel with my X, Y, or Z, I'm going to lose my mind, right? It's like, okay, well, if it's your blood pressure medication, I get that is life affirming and you need that. But if it's some supplement that you've been taking for 12 years and you kind of feel better, let's question that, right? I'm absolutely the opposite of an advocate, right? I am anti-app when it comes to Zen meditation, mindfulness apps that I need through oh my God, my battery died. I can't calm down, right? If you're reliant on technology to calm your mind, that's also what started to happen to Anakin Skywalker when he became Darth Vader, right? You start layering these external things because you need hacks to fix you, instead of learning to tap into your awareness and understand that it's your awareness that is it, right? Not what you do to your mind, but what is your mind and who are you in relation to that mind? Those bigger questions are what I think unlock the true freedom, not the hacks that you put in to feel a little better or to change your self-definition a little bit so that you're less anxious at work. That's not enlightenment. That's maybe helpful, but that's not the game. The real game wakes you up and makes you truly free.
Well, I don't think a rabbit hole. I think this was a Dharma gate, and I think it's important to be shared and talked about. And all the years I've been doing these summits and doing the things, I only get to talk about what's real with so many people in a small circle. And it's really important, all of us listening, myself included, we all keep in mind that we are the captains of our own ships, you know? And so I really appreciate that you spent the time to kind of educate people to think about the importance of coming back here to monitor how we're doing and not asking others for that, or and especially in the world of the internet guru and shaman, it's
Amen.
especially important to keep coming back to this system that tells us everything we need to know for the most part.
I appreciate that, because there are people listening to this right now, and you're talking to a guy who's produced 12 docuseries and films. Like, I'm a content producer, I'm a media guy. Also, I've been around this block, and I've become acutely aware of the pathology of overconsumption of information, looking for the answers. And I just got to keep consuming information. And eventually I'm going to hear the one thing that's going to unlock the everything, as if there's some sort of missing piece that is the unlock for me. Not to say that you don't have the information you need to unlock your problems, right? Maybe it is like I had SIBO, I didn't realize it, right? Like, there are pieces of information that are incredibly profound and could unlock it for folks, right? But to me, that's not the message I'm trying to convey. The message is, you are the healer, and you are the awareness that needs to turn back on to then have the interoception and the exteroception and the chemoreception, all these innate senses that you've had for millions of years that have been shut down by flat floors and artificially produced foods and lights and all the things that have kind of shut us off from that internal language. When you could tap back into that internal language, you start to hear and listen, and the answers have always been there. Then the questions get better and bigger. And then, yeah, you could Google stuff and listen to stuff and learn stuff. But your orientation then is anchored in the center of you.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to end around that. Do you have a last wish of well-being for our audience?
Happy New Year. It isn't about tequila and Advil. It isn't about resolutions. It's about the ascending of the yang energy into the next season of your life. So this is the time to think about the seeds you're putting into the earth, and think about how you need to water them in order to see them come to harvest 60, 90, 180 days from now. And what happens to a seed you don't water? It's not enough to plant a seed. If I plant tomatoes, I got to make sure I'm watering them, and in 90 days, I'm eating tomatoes. So don't think of your resolutions as things you say and then you walk away and hope they happen. You have to put time, energy, and money in some form of exchange into the priorities that you say are important to you, and continue to drip that into that direction with your attention folded back on it until it becomes manifest in reality. Now, if that's a tomato seed, it takes 90 days before you have a tomato you can eat. If that's a PhD, that might be a 4-year watering, 10-year watering play. But understand that reality works that way, and understand that if you say you want something, you can get it. What's it going to cost? And are you willing to invest it? And if you're not, don't say you're going to do it, because then you're lying to yourself and the reality around you. The fabric of your being is reliant on your word. If you're going to put your word behind something, understand what it costs. And if it's worth it to you, then do it and continue to water it until it is done.
Well done. Thank you so much. How can people find you?
Easy. Theurbanmonk.com. My books, my films, my series, all my stuff is there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to dig into this stuff with you. Thank you.
Thank you.